My family is very much Lagosian. My father was an architect. He studied at the Architectural Association in London, and there's a tropical architecture course. They were all into Corbusier and socialism. So all these kind of guys think, okay, we're going to come and help the post-emerging independent West Africa. They worked, in the time they worked with local materials. And they also worked with a very tight budget, but they're very creative within what they could do. And they did lots of universities and schools. Even though he was a foreigner, it tends to be ironic sometimes. Foreigners actually appreciate what you have and the incredible stuff there is in the country. So he always worked with traditional material. And my mother was also very pro being Nigerian. She dressed, very funky African, but Western funk. She had a mix. She rose up in the world of nursing to create the Lagos State School of Nursing. And she was always campaigning about women's issues and environmental issues. She was very proud of her culture and her heritage. It's a bit of a pressure for me, I feel sometimes, because I've got two incredible legacies, and yet I want to forge my own, but theirs sometimes takes priority because it's not easy, actually. My very favourite memory is of having a lagoon in front of the house, which no longer exists, which is now Dolphin Estate. So I remember we had our own little canoes, so we'd go out in the water, we knew all the fishermen. It was just a very simple, beautiful life. Everything's designed for air to flow through and push through, so there's no need for air conditioning. You have lots of flow through air. Even as a child, I knew, even from the age of 6, 7, 8, I knew that this isn't something that's going to last. I knew that my childhood was so special that it wasn't something that was going to last. And I was always afraid of it disappearing. I knew. And I had that fear that this wonderful life that I have is not going to be, ain't going to last. Yeah, on his death, he has left a huge legacy. It's what to do with it. Where do you put it? When my father died, my mother was actually dealing with, I think it was University of Newcastle, to try and get it archived over there. But then she died too soon after. Then I tried to follow it through. And when they died, I spent about 6 months of my life packaging and labeling everything. What are we missing out by not documenting? The rest of the world documents. Why do you think we've got a British Museum? Why do you think we have museums everywhere in the world? Because it's important. I have so many old books from the time, architectural books, and so many things which are relevant. But where do you store them? Where do you store these? Where is the facility here? Funny enough, is lack of air conditioner kind of saved this, because if I'd been air conditioner off on, it created moisture and the drawings would have disappeared. Because the way the house is built, there's constant air flowing, which has preserved these drawings. Because my father died in '93, so what year are we in now? It's a long time. Some of them have damage, but the vast majority haven't, which means this house really has good ventilation. I was an art director for a long time, so I was working on like really big budget films like Eyes Wide Shut with Kubrick, or Judge Dredd. The original Judge Dredd was Sylvester Stallone. As I developed, and especially when I came back here, I kind of think, there's more to, forget all that. When you get older as well, maybe that whole sci-fi, that whole fantasy, you maybe grow out of it, or I just felt it's time to actually say something. Let's say something about situation, whether positive or negative. I mean, the negative one's easy, everyone does that, from the West down to so many negative issues. But how do you address the negative issues? How do you make things move forward? I think whatever you do, let's try and put a bit of the culture into it. We live in the Western world, yes, but why don't we take what we have to take, because the world is going in a certain way, you can't deny it. But why don't we then try and make it our own? We have a tendency to try and eliminate anything. Ours isn't good enough. How do we define our own Nigerian modernity? How do we move on but still keep our funky, our own? Why can't we let the West come and say, oh, look at what Nigerians do, let's copy them? It's about history, but it's about also the modernity of it all. You can't stay stuck. We can't all stay stuck in history, obviously. And if you don't know history, how do you know how to progress? Because you're not understanding fundamentally who you are. So it's not. I can't say you can blame everybody, because if it hasn't been taught at schools, how do you then build that sense of pride? And then if you come as a returnee, you've got the European or the Western history, and you come here and you try and bring the West straight over here instead of trying to integrate it. It's about integration. Really, it's about integration.